Hi there, and welcome to our Vegas Nation Stadium Show, where we provide inside analysis and all the up-to-date information on what's happening with the NFL Stadium set to open in Las Vegas in 2020. I'm your host, Rick Velotta, a business writer for the Las Vegas Review-Journal. Ed Graney, who usually hosts this show, is covering the Vegas Golden Knights. Today we have a special guest, a name everybody who has followed the development of the Stadium Authority is familiar with, Jeremy Aguero. Jeremy is a principal with Las Vegas-based Applied Analysis, which is serving as the staff of the Las Vegas Stadium Authority. Welcome, Jeremy.
Thanks for having me.
I guess for openers, this is a pretty good little gig that you got. How did you get into the business of being the staff for the Stadium Authority?
Largely serendipity. We worked in the 2015 legislative session, which created the Southern Nevada Tourism Infrastructure Committee. That ultimately led to Steve Hill becoming the chair and him asking me if I could help him work on that a little bit. We did that for about 16 months, went up to the legislature, got a little legislation passed that ultimately created the Las Vegas Stadium Authority and created the capacity to build not only the stadium but the convention center. Because Steve also became the chair of that, he asked me if I could help him out to try and get it to where we are, and so that's how it all developed.
Well, you and I see each other a lot at some of these meetings because you provide economic analysis and you do a lot of reports on these things. How much time does it take for you to develop some of these reports that you use in some of these Stadium Authority meetings?
Oh gosh, during 2017 we had literally thousands of hours on the project. But it wasn't just the economic analyses, of course, it was all of the project documents that had to be created that we worked with the Raiders and with other folks to get done. So the combination of the administrative requirements, the negotiation and the project documents, and then ultimately the economic and fiscal analyses, how much it's going to cost and where those dollars are going to go, was a little over 1,000 hours for me personally last year.
That's quite an accomplishment because you have other things going on within your own business as well, right?
Yeah, less so because of the stadium project. There's no doubt about that. But unfortunately, I had almost 3,700 hours that I worked last year. I'd like to avoid that this year if I can do that.
Okay, so this last week we had another Stadium Authority board meeting, and Authority Chairman Steve Hill at the meeting said basically that he hopes that these meetings are pretty boring in the future because that means that everything is running smoothly and it's pretty routine. Do you think that these meetings are boring?
No, absolutely not. I think they're incredibly exciting, every one of them. I think Steve makes an excellent point, right? The whole idea is for the project to run smoothly, on time, on budget, reflecting what was anticipated in terms of this project. And so I think that's what everyone hopes for. Certainly the Stadium Authority Board members are engaged, but it is a very different set of meetings now. Now that the construction is well underway as opposed to everything being planned in the documents, I think there's a hope that the template that's been set up is essentially filled in with a stadium and that everything runs very smoothly.
And for the most part, things have gone pretty smoothly so far, haven't they?
Yeah, generally speaking, yes. Look, any project of this magnitude, you're going to have things that come up, and they're going to come up in the future. But I think the reality is that at this point in time, we have everybody sort of pulling in the same direction. Right. The Raiders want to be here. There's no doubt about that. Las Vegas wants the Raiders to be here. The Stadium Authority is doing that. And frankly, Las Vegas and the state of Nevada, our default position is yes, how can we help? What can we do in order to make this work? And I think you combine all those things with everyone pulling in that same direction. It's not that you don't run into problems, it's just our ability to solve them.
While you and I know how important it is to have all these legal documents in place to express the terms of the deal between Clark County, state of Nevada, and the Raiders, we also know that most of the people are focused on what's going on at I-15 and Russell Road, the actual construction site. Can you describe for viewers what Don Webb, the COO of the Raiders Stadium Construction Company subsidiary, said at this week's meeting about what progress is being made on the site?
Yeah, look, I think anybody that drives down I-15 is seeing it, right? Where do you see all of the cranes? And you see the number of cars, the number of folks that are working out there, which I think is remarkably impressive. At this point, there's about $250 million that's been invested in the project. There are hundreds of people that are working on site. Essentially the pillars that underlie the stadium have been laid, and the foundation is now getting started. So it's very exciting overall. Over 1 million cubic yards of dirt has been moved. They've completed the blasting phase of the project, and essentially some 35,000 semi-trailers have moved that dirt off-site. They've constructed a concrete batch plant. They've got a huge trailer city for all of the folks, including not only construction but also the engineers and the superintendents and the folks that monitor those sites. The progress is on schedule for what is a very aggressive timeline to bring a project of this magnitude online. But I think when Don Webb came before the Stadium Authority to deliver his report, I think the board and the public should be encouraged by the fact that as of right now, they are on track with the timeline, the schedule, and the budget of the project.
I think one of the interesting things that I took away from that was the fact that virtually all the excavation is completed, and they didn't find any surprises, because that, as you know and as he pointed out, is where you can expect to see possible delays, possible cost overruns, things like that. But they didn't run into any of that, and so therefore some of the savings that's going to be accrued from the fact that they didn't have to go back on anything is going to actually be able to go into some other part of the project at some point.
I think this is an incredibly important point, right? The contingency amount, the amount of money that's set to the side in case something comes up, has actually gone up in the project as a result of the fact that they didn't run into problems. But look, let's be honest. If you look at stadium projects that have been constructed around the United States, there are problems with design issues, there are problems with development issues, there are problems with site issues and construction issues. I think you have to be impressed with the Raiders and their development team, because they were exhaustive relative to the exercise in terms of design and development, and thus far it has paid dividends, including the construction and the site work, which has turned out exactly as they predicted, and as a matter of fact, a little better than what they predicted.
Yeah, it sounds like the concrete foundations, as you pointed out, for the buildings are nearing completion, and later this summer we'll actually see some of the steel coming up out of the ground. But for you and the Stadium Authority, what can be expected in the months ahead for the Stadium Authority, not necessarily the construction part?
Sure. So the Stadium Authority has a fair amount of administrative requirements that have to happen during that sort of while. There are a number of reports that are issued. For example, every month the stadium provides an overview of what the progress is, and we want to make sure that it's in line with expectations. Stadium Authority Board has retained an authority construction representative that attends regularly scheduled meetings and meets with the development team. Getting that information back is, of course, very important to, again, ensuring that the project is meeting expectations. In addition to that, there's the PSL program that I know has everybody's attention recently, because there's a lot of sales activity that's going on, but there's a lot of reporting that has to go out. There are financial activities every month processing what is being constructed. We're talking about this month, there'll be about $40 million worth of activity that occurred on that site. And so reviewing all of that and making sure that it's done right is where the Stadium Authority Board is the work that the Stadium Authority Board needs to focus on really over the next, what is about 795 days at this point.
You know, you and I know that the stadium has actually been a point of contention as an issue in the race for governor. In reality, can there be any significant changes in the project going forward by whoever ends up in the governor's office next January?
Well, look, could there be? I mean, look, I guess we could conceive of something that would happen, but the reality of it is I think that is quite unlikely. If we look at the budgets that are created for transportation projects and how those monies are allocated, if we look at the monies that are allocated to the repayment of the stadium bonds and the fact that those are pledged to bond holders at this point and that those bonds have been issued, if you look at all of those things, the reality is that the table has been set relative to the construction of the project. The legislature legislature has passed and laws exist that essentially facilitate where we are today. The idea that some third party would enter in, they could certainly make the project more difficult, they could make it less viable, but really the economic implications on that would be not only negative for the stadium, but would be negative for the community. The whole idea behind the stadium is generating economic activity, leveraging the fact that we have 147,000 hotel rooms, leveraging the fact that we have the second busiest origination and destination airport in the country, leveraging the fact that we have 42 million visitors and 300,000 leisure and hospitality workers, to say nothing of the fact of 2.3 million residents, all of which will have the ability to take advantage of that. Slowing that or making it less accessible through transportation will only negate or hurt those economic opportunities. It's not going to stop the stadium from being built or the Raiders from playing there, because that's already well into the works.
Right. So what is the next significant milestone as far as the stadium authority is concerned? I know that, are we going to see more boring meetings, or are we going to see more things happening that, as far as the development of these agreements are concerned?
Look, in a perfect world, they're going to be the most boring meetings known to man. And I think Steve Hill is exactly right. If everything goes perfectly, that's where it's going to be. But look, Rick, I think honestly, inevitably, there are going to be a few bumps in the road. And that isn't going to, we're not going to be defined by those. We're going to be defined by our ability to work past them as a community together with the Raiders and their team. That's going to happen. Where exactly it's going to happen, I can't tell you that. But I think that with any luck, the vast majority of these meetings are going to be relatively uneventful. What they're going to be doing is reporting progress and continuing to move forward in that regard. And that is what Chair Hill has indicated he wants from his staff, and what the board has indicated they expect from us each and every meeting. And so we're going to make every effort to make that happen.
So have you ever stopped to think about the historical context of what this stadium means to Southern Nevada and what your role is in that history?
It's hard for me to do that. I think at this point in my career, I do sort of take a moment every now and then to look back and say, hey, we did something pretty great here. I want to recognize the moment that we're involved in. In terms of being part of history or something along those lines, I've had other folks sort of say that to me before. I don't know that I'm quite ready to accept that. But the reality is that this is the community that I live in. I have 3 children who live here. My family's been here since 1905. My grandmother used to tell me that our most important responsibility is to leave the community better than we found it. And I think this is going to be one of those things where I feel like I'm part of something where we are going to leave this community just a little bit better than we found it. I'm proud to be a resident here, and I'm very excited about the prospects of this development.
Okay, so here is the million-dollar question. Are you a Raiders fan?
Look, I grew up a Miami Dolphins fan because my father immigrated from Cuba into Florida before he moved here. My mother's side's been the one that's been here forever. So I will always be a Miami Dolphins fan. But look, there's no way I don't root for our hometown team. The Las Vegas Raiders are going to be the hometown team, and I will be behind them 100%.
And you'll probably be at all those Dolphins-Raiders games that are played here in Las Vegas, right?
There's no doubt.
Just as I will be at the Bronco games that are played in the stadium. And we get them every year, so we'll see what happens. Well, there you have it. Keep your eye out in the next few weeks for important stadium updates. We hope you enjoyed the show, and remember, for all your stadium and Raiders news, go to reviewjournal.com daily and check back here at Vegas Nation, where we will continue to bring you stadium shows as the project is built before our very eyes. For special guest Jeremy Aguero of Applied Analysis, I'm Rick Velotta. Thanks for watching.